And welcome. This is Jay Larsen, CEO of the Idaho Technology Council. Thank you for joining us for our first podcast in our series, Innovation Matters. As we adopt to changing times where organizations and government agencies are working remotely, it is increasingly important for us to stay connected with local tech companies like Cradlepoint, who we're going to hear from today, and share innovative practices and continue to grow computing literacy throughout Idaho. Today, we'll be talking with George Mulhern, CEO of Cradlepoint. And Cradlepoint is one of the most fantastic tech Internet of Things companies in Idaho and the United States. George will be giving us some insights on how Cradlepoint has adopted their business flow during this trying times of COVID-19 and continue to innovate in ways they haven't explored before. And later we'll have Sean Keithley with the city of Boise. But first, thank you, George. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jay.
Yeah, this has been great. I was just mentioning it's been about 8 years ago where when George just first took over as the CEO of Cradlepoint, and it was so interesting. George came from a wonderful background with Hewlett Packard. Then he went over and worked for Highway 12 as a partner there, and then became the CEO. And during that time, George, we had a discussion, and you talked about the reason they brought you in to be the CEO is so you could scale Cradlepoint. Can you talk a little bit about how you scaled Cradlepoint and the technology and what's been going on in your world?
Sure. Yeah, there's been a lot going on in our world lately, but yeah, when I first got to Cradlepoint, the company, well, the thesis of the company has pretty much held, and that was that mobility was going to become increasingly important, and that the cellular networks would also play an increasingly important role in that mobility. And so the first products that Cradlepoint had, and as I was getting there, were really more oriented around consumers, prosumers, business travelers. So creating a Wi-Fi hotspot using a USB stick to connect to the cellular network and then create a Wi-Fi hotspot. And it was a really purely a hardware business. So we're in a very different business now, but everything we learned during that period has really, much of it has turned out to be key parts of our competitive advantage today. But it was a difficult business. For example, we were selling through Best Buy and Fry's Electronics and consumer channels. And if you didn't support the latest USB modem, 25% of your product got returned, things like that. So the company early in 2010, 2011 decided to pivot into the enterprise space. And that's where we really saw an opportunity to grow and to scale the company. And so today what we offer is really a cloud-delivered, cloud-orchestrated, enterprise-grade wireless wide area network that companies are using to connect branch offices or mobile vehicles or IoT devices to the internet and to their enterprise networks. And we deliver that all. We've moved from being a hardware company. We now deliver that all as a subscription service to our customers. And today, 80% of the company's revenue is subscription-based, which gives us a little more stability as a company. And as we've made that transition to the enterprise, we're deployed in half of the Fortune 500 today. Our top verticals are the retail vertical, finance, insurance, public sector, and healthcare. And as you might imagine, right now, a couple of those are doing better than the other two with this whole COVID-19 experience.
What is, you also have a lot with first responders, those type of things. I mean, that's been a big part of your business as well, right?
Yeah, we have, in fact, that's one of the parts of the business that still, right now, we're really hopping to fulfill the needs and the demands in that first responder market. And we're in about 3,000 different first responder agencies in the U.S. today. So San Francisco Police, San Jose Police, Boise Police, Meridian Police and Fire, LA Fire, New York Fire. So we do quite a bit with first responders. So that's one area of our business right now that's we're really trying to make sure we stay on top of and keep up with. The other, frankly, is healthcare. And with The advantage of a wireless network is you can turn that up with our cloud platform, you can turn it up in minutes as opposed to pulling cables or wires in and then building out a network. We are, for example, right now they're using our product at FedEx Field where the Redskins play they're building pop-up medical clinics and drive-through testing facilities. And we're doing that across the country right now. So that's an area of the business that's extremely busy today as well. We've got pop-up clinics, pop-up drive-through testing, those types of things. We're in some of the other public sector areas I mentioned to you earlier, Jay. We've got, I think I was just looking today, we've had in the last week 20 different school districts that are now putting a Cradlepoint router on their school bus, which also has Wi-Fi, driving that school bus and parking it at night in low-income neighborhoods. And if you're within 100, 150 yards of the bus, you get access to that Wi-Fi. So kids that may not have internet at their home are getting access to Wi-Fi when they're in a work or a study from home status at that point.
Wow, that's a great application, George. That's amazing. And one other question before we talk about COVID-19. What's been the relationship? About a year and a half ago, there were discussion about Cradlepoint being one of the top companies that, like Verizon, is utilizing to be able to deploy 5G. Whereabouts are you in the 5G deployment? What's happening in that space right now?
Yeah, we invested early in 5G, and we've had both AT&T and Verizon in the U.S. have announced us as their partner for 5G in the enterprise. We're not playing in the consumer space. We're enterprise focused. Our first 5G launch will be with Telstra in Australia, and that's coming in May. And so they're rolling out 5G there across the country. And we have, there's a couple of different flavors of 5G. So there's what they call millimeter wave, and then sub-6, which is a little easier to manage. And Telstra is rolling out a sub-6 5G network, which T-Mobile will do similar in the U.S. Verizon's focused on millimeter wave, which will have higher performance, but also it's going to require greater cell density and that type of thing to get it fully built out.
Well, so a lot of opportunity, and if I could say this, George, I think that Cradlepoint's been one of the most innovative companies in the mobility space. Certainly one of the top in the United States. So congratulations on all that work. Maybe let's move a little bit to how COVID-19 has impacted you.
Sure.
And,
first of all, I probably shouldn't let it pass what you just said. We're actually the number one provider of LTE enterprise networking solutions in the world today. So
I have to back up a little bit. So I should not just limit it to the United States, to the world. That is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't want you to sell us short, Jay. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, George.
So talking about COVID-19, well, first of all, we're all work from home right now. We have multiple sites around the world, but today all of them are in a work from home status. And we do have folks coming into. We have a distribution center in Meridian, 5 Mile area, and that's where we ship product from. We are considered an essential service, so we're able to bring some people into that distribution center or into our lab. We still have some folks using some of the test chambers, but we've got a whole new set of procedures for how we keep that clean and social distancing and that type of thing. But when you talk about our public sector business, we're we just had an order this week from White House Communications, working with FEMA, all the first responders we've talked about. So we have a lot of support to keep the supply coming in those areas. But as I said before, if you think about our retail vertical and restaurants, like if you walk down Fairview Ave or Eagle Road, there's a Cradlepoint in every Panera, every McDonald's, every Starbucks, every Chick-fil-A, every Burger King. So those kinds of places, they're struggling a bit, and that part of our business is definitely slowing down. But I will say it's been very interesting moving to a work from home, because in some ways there's been a short-term burst in productivity because you don't have all the day-to-day interrupts, and people are working very hard because, as a venture-backed company, we don't have the kind of deep balance sheet that a Cisco does, right? We've always tried to run the company close to break even, so we're pumping every additional dollar we get into innovation and growth. And so for us, it's really critical right now that we keep the business going and we keep all of our employees employed, and that's really what we're focused on right now.
That's interesting, George, because I mean, if you're talking about your ability to look at how you can keep your R&D and all these type of things going, that's critical for you, isn't it? I mean, because you're a cutting edge company. The way you keep it, so how do you do that remotely? I guess that's kind of an interesting way. Yeah.
Well, so as soon as this started to hit, we formed a cross-functional task force inside of Cradlepoint. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. We had made the decision actually a while back that instead of buying desktop computers, everybody was going to use a laptop. And so that really helped in terms of that work from home transition. But, we also, our IT guys had to go out and they secured a whole bunch more VPN licenses from one of our providers, so that all the R&D guys who are working in our cloud platform and in our firmware and software could get access to that from home. So we did things like that. We expanded our conferencing capability, for example, what we're doing right now, so that we could certainly stay in touch. And then I do a weekly all hands call for updates to the entire organization. Each of our managers is doing a weekly stand up with their teams. So really trying to keep the communication flowing when we're all kind of remote. One of the concerns I have as we go through this is we're in the honeymoon period, really, I think, in this work from home, where it's still new and people are settling in. And I think one of the things I'm really looking towards is how do we keep finding ways to virtually replace that coffee pot chat that you might have when you're walking down the hall, and make sure we're getting that. A lot of innovation is serendipitous like that, right? Where just a couple of ideas get bounced around. So how do we keep that going? And then how do we keep the spirits up when people are somewhat isolated? And I'll give you an example. Our R&D manager, for his staff, it's all virtual, all on Zoom. They had, it was hat day, right? And so they had different backgrounds they were putting up. They were wearing funky hats. They had themes that we're doing, and just kept it kind of light. And, in a time like this, that can help as well.
That's great. I think that's what's really good is I think you're focused on still keeping the whole innovative process that you've developed, the whole culture going, but you're doing it remotely. And I really like the focus you have on continued communication with your team, as well as the ability to keep your team employed through Cradlepoint. I mean, that's we were talking briefly about this, and that was which was the one that's most impactful, the financial crisis or what's happening right now. And obviously, we hope this is going to be much shorter term, but it's we're in crazy times, aren't we, George?
Yeah, we are. I mean, most of the financial folks that we talk to are projecting a very, very steep decline in Q2, and then hopefully starting to ramp back up in Q3 and Q4. Some are a little more pessimistic than that. So, obviously we've gone through quite a bit of scenario planning in terms of where can we make cuts short of cutting people that are going to help us get through this thing.
Yeah.
And we're exploring, all opportunities and avenues, including taking on more debt if we can, or if we need to, or going back to our investors, or kind of last resort would be cutting programs that would certainly slow some of our progress in the future. But we say all the time that it takes every soul in Cradlepoint to get us where we want to go, and every job's important, and no job is more important than another. And so one of my goals is to get through this thing with everybody that's working from home now, a place back in the office when we're done with this.
Well, you just basically said this. This is my last question was going to be, how do you see the future, let's say the next 6 months to 18 months? What do you see? You've kind of mentioned some of that. How do you see the changes, and we'll let you go from there.
I'm really very optimistic right now, because from a Cradlepoint standpoint, one of the things that's happening is the operators, the carriers, are adding capacity like crazy right now to their networks, to their cellular networks. When we get through this and not everybody's working from home again, there's going to be a lot of capacity they're going to want to fill. That, I think, is going to mean more aggressive, better priced data plans for people to really start to utilize cellular in their businesses even more. I think for us, this kind of crisis has proven the value of a network that you're able to turn up in minutes instead of weeks, which is what we do. And frankly, we're getting introduced to a whole new set of customers as well as we go through this. And so I think as we come out the other end of this, as long as we can kind of keep that innovation pipeline going and keep the team we have intact, we're going to see some really strong growth. As we get into 5G, that will be a game changer over the next 2 to 3 years. But even before that, I think LTE in the next 18 months is really going to accelerate as well.
Fantastic. George, thank you so much. We'll look forward to having you on about 6 months from now, back on Innovation Matters, and get another update. And thanks for all that you're doing, also helping with school, local districts, and people will be able to work who don't have internet at home and those type of things. So thanks for all the work you're doing there too.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, George. Have a good day. Thanks so much. And also now we'll go, after hearing from George Mulhern, CEO of Cradlepoint, we now have the opportunity to have on Innovation Matters, Sean Keithley, who is the Director of Economic Development for the City of Boise. Sean, welcome.
Jay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you can join us, Sean. We know that there's been a lot of things happen in your world, right? I mean, over the last 2 weeks, everything's been in the city, and the demands with what you've been doing and what Mayor McLean's been doing has probably been phenomenal. But let's talk about what's going on right now. Yesterday, we had the big announcement that took place where Governor Little came out and basically said we all have to be, it's work from our own shelters and everything we're doing here. How is that? What's happened within the city of Boise since that announcement yesterday?
Well, Jay, we're doing our best to stay agile and make sure that we are adapting to every day, because every day has proven to be different than the last. Our most important priority is certainly on maintaining the health and safety and welfare of the community. The mayor's emergency order on Tuesday was part of that, and similarly, we applaud and welcomed the governor's order yesterday as well. The two orders are similar in their intent. Applications a little bit different, but certainly the two of those orders are intended really just to help ensure that we get through this in hopefully an expedited and most importantly a safe and healthy way for everybody here in Boise and in Idaho. So that's the critical focus we have on city business right now, just making sure that we keep our community safe, keep our folks at the city healthy, like the rest of the community, and like I say, just try to stick together and get through this.
I think that Sean, the Mayor McLean's done a wonderful job showing some great leadership and reaching out to business leaders, trying to make sure everybody's informed and making decisions to be able to, shut down restaurants and other type of public gathering spaces. What do you think the biggest challenges are going to take place for the mayor and the city of Boise going forward over the next month or so?
Well, I think like everyone, I mean, as George alluded to, part of the challenge is just getting used to this temporary change in how we do business. Working remotely, in a way that sort of happened all of a sudden for everybody. I don't think anybody could say we were totally prepared for this. Although I was very impressed to hear how kind of seamlessly George described things happening at Cradlepoint. I wish I could have said the same for myself, but we're doing our best here. I'm firmly planted here at my kitchen bar, and I've set up much to my wife's disdain, my office here temporarily during the day. So, we all have our own challenges.
Yeah, your wife is in the other room, right? I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah, it's like how do you cover everything? This is great because both you and George are on the Idaho Technology Council's Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, I just said Hall of Fame, Board of Trustees. What I think is so interesting is that you can see the correlation that needs to take place between the industry and the cities and local municipalities to be able to make good things happen. So think about this if you can for us, because I know you have a major focus within industry and the economy in the Boise area. What do you think we can do to help with this, or what do you think this is? First, maybe what's the impact this is having to the economy in Boise right now?
Well, that's a great question and a great point you make, Jay. And I'd be remiss not to mention that not all of us are lucky enough to be able to just go home and work remotely. We have a whole service industry out there, for example, that's at a standstill. There are other sectors of the economy that are in the same place. Small businesses, especially going to be struggling during these next few weeks, and hopefully not too much longer than that, but we don't know. So that's a big part of our focus in the Office of Economic Development, is making sure that we address the needs of the whole community, but certainly here, small business is a focus. So one of the things that the mayor and I highlighted in our call last week to the business community was some of our work that we're doing with our partners like Trailhead, for example, and the Venture College. And they are working hard to quickly stand up resources, just like you have here, to ensure that the networks that we have put in place in our business community, in our tech community, are focused on right now addressing the needs in the community that can help those, especially help those who are in need right now the most. That Trailhead BSU Venture College collaboration I mentioned, the Survive to Thrive series, focuses on helping entrepreneurs and startups with the basics of how to get through a crisis like this and how to access critical funding. Speaking of critical funding, I think just in the past week, 3 major programs came through at the federal level. Much to the we owe a lot of thanks to our partners here for helping to push that forward and make that happen, folks. Everyone from the business community to the chamber to our senators' offices that helped advocate to make this legislation happen. We were part of that too, but a lot of credit goes, of course, to the business community and our other partners. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing that we see as worth our time and effort to help support the business community and make sure that they know that we're here as a resource, as a connector. A big part of our role in a normal time, when we're not affected by a pandemic like this, is to be a connector of resources and needs. That's especially important right now. That's something that I'd like to just make sure we highlight again. The city is here to leverage every bit of the of our network that we can to make sure that we connect resources and needs to make some of these recovery-oriented actions happen.
Well, and your point that's made is that the service industry, the food industry, let's go out and support those by, going through the drive-through or whatever you can, because that's going to be a big way to keep them going. I really like the survive to thrive type thing, because the places that will be really impacted are those who are trying to start new industry and the new ideas, new companies. And so we've got to help them. So thanks for all the work that you've been doing with the city of Boise on Trailhead, obviously the Venture College through Boise State. And that type of work is vital for us to be able to help these new companies, because after all, these are going to be the companies that 10, 15 years from now, we're going to be the ones that are going to be the Cradlepoints of the world, like we just talked to George, which was founded in about 2006. So anything else you have that we could focus on at all, Sean, in parting?
I guess I would just emphasize that, and George mentioned this too, but times like this create, in a strange way, opportunities for resilience through innovation. And this is it's an opportunity for us to see where we can put some of these resources to work to address some of the critical, unique issues we're facing right now. And I think with the unique entrepreneur community, the strong tech community we have here, you're already seeing it happen, but it won't be long before I think we have some pretty impressive action taking place that will help to rebuild and help us move toward recovery from this what I've heard called as an economic hurricane.
You were exactly right. Economic hurricane's a good place to put it. We'll put a bookmark on this and have you back again, Sean, as we talk about what's happening. And we certainly want you to know how much we appreciate you and Mayor McLean and the work that's taking place, and the climate that's connecting here in the state and throughout the city of Boise. So thank you so much for all your work. So
thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate your kind words and your support as always, and thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. So we hope you will join us next week when we are here. Again, tech issues are always going to be the biggest thing we talk about. Idaho has the fastest growing software industry as a percent of the state's GDP. And we'll continue to do that. And we hope you join us next week when we actually talk to Paris Cole, CEO of truckstop.com and also chair of the Idaho Technology Council. And we also are hopeful to have Senator Jim Risch join us as well. And this is Jay Larsen with the Idaho Technology Council, keeping you connected with industry and government, because in Idaho, innovation matters. Thank you all, and be safe out there.